sell any more tickets today?
A few, yeah. Most everyone was rushing home. It's Friday, but we sold a few.
I think you have too many dead things in your museum, Daddy.
Do you?
She's right. You need something alive.
Go to sleep, both of you.
Something sensational.
That's a big word.
It's your word. Something that isn't stuffed. Like a mermaid. Or a unicorn. Unicorns aren't real. Well, mermaids aren't real either.
How's it looking, girls?
Hey, you looking for freaks? I know where you can find one of them.
Really?
Come on, girls.
Oh,
Sir, you shouldn't be here.
I'm sorry. Who's doing this singing? It's you, isn't it?
Sir, I have to ask you to leave.
You are so talented, blessed. Extraordinary. Unique. I would even say beautiful.
Sir, please leave me alone.
They don't understand, but they will.
You have too many dead things in your museum. Have any of you seen this movie? If you haven't, you should. It's just an amazing. It's called The Greatest Showman. And you know, when it came out, the critics panned it because they didn't like it because it's really not true to life, or at least true to P.T. Barnum. Doesn't show the darker side of his circus, and in some ways, the ways he enslaved some people, actually. But I like the movie a lot. First of all, the music's excellent, but more than that, there are so many messages in here. I'm just going to focus on one today. We will probably see another clip of this movie another time. So many messages in here about the faith and everyday life, which is, forgot to mention this last week with all the commotion, which is our sermon series for the next few weeks called Faith in the Movies. And I really do want to find those connections between what's being said in the movies, the messages that are being given, and our everyday life of faith. And so this is P.T. Barnum, and he is the greatest showman, and he has these big dreams. And he has had these big dreams for a long, long time, ever since he was a boy. He grew up, according to the movie, he grew up in complete poverty. He lost his father at a young age. He's on the street by himself. He's shown some kindness by a young girl or young woman who is disfigured, hands him an apple. And now he's at the point where he can finally begin to try to realize those dreams. And to make it happen, he has purchased a wax museum, thinking that there are going to be all kinds of people who are just going to come in droves to the museum because they're going to want to see all these curiosities. And he's going to make a pile of money, and he's going to become rich, and he's going to become famous, and he's going to finally be able to give his family the life that he promised them. And it is not working out that way at all. Not at all. He has sold, he kind of lied to the girls, he sold exactly 3 tickets. He sold one to his wife and one to each of his daughters. And that's it. It's not working. Daddy, you have too many dead things in your museum. You need something alive, something sensational, something real. And then he sees the apple and remembers the little girl. and he starts looking for something alive amongst a bunch of dead people, people who are dead to the world, people who have been shunned as outcasts by society. So first he goes to a dwarf, a man who's barely 2 feet tall, and he says, I'm going to make you General Tom Thumb. And then he finds a tall man who he makes even taller by putting him on stilts and renames him the Irish Giant. And then there's a young man who has hair all over his body. Guess what he's called? Dog Boy. And then there's this woman in the movie clip, the bearded lady. And the world sees these people as pariahs, as outcasts. They barely qualify as being people, and they are treated as such. Barnum sees something different. He sees an opportunity to make money, for sure. But he sees in them nobility. He sees in them something unique, something special, something extraordinary. Something, as he said to this woman, dare I say, even beautiful. And the women laugh. And did you hear her response? Sir, please leave me alone. You see, she is real. She has a real heart that's been cut. She has a real soul that has been wounded. And she doesn't want to hurt anymore. It's way better to be invisible than to get your hopes up, to be told that something that can't possibly be true. She says, don't call me those things. Don't say that I'm anything other than the freak that the rest of the world has named me. Leave me alone. But she is real. She's as real can be. Sir, leave me alone. Let me be dead. And he says to her, they don't understand, but they will. Let's sing. So the lesson that Conley just read to you, and by the way, thank you, Conley. Man, convoluted lesson. There's all kinds of things. There's layers upon layers upon layers of stuff going on. There are themes coming out of our ears with this lesson. But I want to just focus on one thing. I could literally spend a month of Sundays talking about this lesson. But I want to just focus on one thing. I don't want to focus on the water. That's for another time. Instead, I want to focus on perceptions. What people see. And I want to just simply lay this question out. When people look at the woman at the well, what do they see? Well, the first thing they see is that she is a Samaritan. And as John points out in the reading, in the story, Jews and Samaritans don't hold things in common. Okay, that is the understatement of the year. There is a long-standing animosity, a mistrust, and it has been there literally for centuries between Jews and Samaritans. Jews and Samaritans are cousins, But they have not gotten along for a long, long time. They have gone their separate ways, 2 separate countries, the whole thing. And so when Jesus talks to her, he's crossing lines. And when he asks her for a favor, he's asking a favor from someone for whom it's forbidden to even just associate with them. So first of all, this woman is a Samaritan. The next thing, she's a she. Now that doesn't mean much to us in this day and age, at least not as much as it did back then, because back then it was a big deal that a man was talking to a woman. A woman who has, in that society, no identity apart from the man with whom she's associated. Either a husband or a father or a son. So you had to be married, or you had to be attached to your dad or your son. Otherwise, you were nothing. You could not find a job. You could not earn a living. You were on your own completely. And also back in those days, if you were on your own completely, there was something wrong with you. Something you had done to deserve this kind of treatment from God. That was the way they felt about things. That was the way they acted those things out. And so this woman, who has to be married in order to have an identity, has had 5 husbands. Now you listen to the lesson as Conley reads it, and it sounds scandalous. It's not scandalous at all. It's tragic. 5 different times. Don't know exactly how these marriages ended. Probably a few of them, I'm certain a few of them ended with the death of the husband. Some of them may have ended with a divorce. Death of the husband. No son, no father, you are on your own. You can't make a living, you are fending for yourself, picking up whatever scraps happen to be available. Divorce. All the man has to do to divorce his wife is not like something she's doing. Maybe it's the way she cooks the meals. Maybe it's the way she cleans the house. Maybe it's the way she has spoken to his son. Maybe it's even just the way she looks when she's out in public. And so he hands her a piece of paper and says, I divorce you. No son, no father, she's on her own. He gets to keep everything he has. He keeps his job, he keeps his income, he keeps his position in the community. Without the man, she has no identity. So, she's a Samaritan first. Second, she's a she. And third, the man she's currently living with is not her husband. Sounds scandalous, doesn't it? It's not. It's tragic. Because more than likely, the man that she's living with was her last husband's brother. The husband probably died. And then it is the brother's duty to take this woman and try to have a child with her so that the dead husband will have an heir. This is a service. Can you believe this stuff? This is a service that brothers provide to brothers. And she's just a receptacle of that service. That's all she is. But it's not really a marriage. So, when people look at her, what do they see? They see a Samaritan who you don't talk to, and you certainly don't ask favors of. They see a woman without an identity. And they see someone who is living with a man who is not her husband, and she is lost, and she's alone. But that's not what they see. What they see is scandal. What they see is a bearded lady. They see a social pariah. an outcast, a leper. And just like the bearded lady, she doesn't fit, but they can't stop looking at her. Jesus sees something different. He talks to her, breaks the boundaries. He asks for a favor. You don't do that. And then he tells her everything she's ever been and done. And not in a way of judgment, but in a way of saying, I know who you are. I understand. I get it. And you know something? You're noble. And you're talented. And you're extraordinary. And you're unique. And you're beautiful. And so at the end of the story, the disciples come back to the well. By the way, it's midday. You know why she's there at midday? Everybody else comes at the beginning of the day. And everybody else comes together. She comes at the heat of the day because she wants to remain invisible. It's easier to live with the dull ache by yourself than it is to be in a group of people who cut and trample your broken heart. And so the disciples come and they see Jesus with this woman and they say, what in the world are you doing talking to her? And it's almost as if Jesus turns to her and says, they don't understand, but they will. Let's sing. They don't understand, but they will. They think that following Jesus is about one thing, but it's really about something else. And this woman, this dead thing that is living with this broken and hurting heart, is the key to everything we are as followers of Jesus. They don't understand, but they will. He's going to go to trial. They don't understand, but they will. He will be convicted of a crime he didn't commit. They won't understand, but they will. He will be nailed on a cross, an executioner's cross. He will be the pariah of the world. Someone who is hanging there, doesn't belong there, but is hanging there for the world to see as an outcast, as a pariah, as someone who does not belong to the rest of us. They don't understand, but they will. And he will gather all together around that cross to find your spots where you are broken and hurting and alone. Those spots where the world, if they could just see them, those things, they would never accept you. They would never take you for what you are. You see, there's really two kinds of people, isn't there? There's people who have brokenness that they can't hide. There's people who don't fit in, and there's no denying it. You can see it when you look at them. You can hear it when you talk to them. And then there are broken people who just look acceptable to everyone else, who look respectable. But you know, they all have two things in common. Number one, they're broken. And number two, we're gathered underneath the cross of Jesus. The one who was wounded for our transgressions. The one who became all of the ugliness that the world has to throw at him, so that he might bring us together as one. My friends, that's the church. It's not a social club. It's not a place where you get your way or I get my way, or we got to find some way in the middle. It's none of those things. It's not an organization. It's not a place where we get together just to have fun. We do have fun here, don't get me wrong, but it's much more than that. It's about your heart. It's about all of the ways that you don't fit in, except you fit in here because of the one who turns to you and says, oh, if they saw it, they would never understand. But they will. They will. Let me just say one more thing. And let me say it to those of you who are here, but especially those of you who are out watching the live stream. Because some of you maybe didn't get here not because of the weather today, but because you know you don't fit in. You know you don't belong. Just have one thing to say. It's a lie. It's not true. This is the place where we are gathered around a Savior who sees us not for the scars we carry, but for the heart inside, wounded and scarred. And he looks at you and he says, oh, you're unique. You're extraordinary. You're beautiful. You're mine. And for that we give him thanks and praise.